Welcome to my channel, and my name is Khalifa. I'm a solutions architect slash developer. Today I'm going to be doing a guide, a GitHub Actions guide, because I want to get more versed on GitHub Actions. I'm familiar with using Circle CI. If you don't know what Circle CI is, it's a continuous integration and continuous deployment platform. It helps developers to automate the building, testing, and deployment of applications, so software or whatever. You can use it to basically streamline the development process and ensure consistent code quality. So with that, I have been trying to get more versed on GitHub Actions. So I'm going to start doing more videos and tutorials as I learn and grow in this area. So hopefully you'll join me today for this one, which is creating a Docker container action. What I'd like to be able to learn from this tutorial or guide is to how to run custom containers for different jobs. I have a number of images that I've built previously, and I'd like to be able to use those just the same as I do for Circle CI in different jobs to run different kinds of commands and steps or whatnot. Without getting deeper into the reason why, let's go ahead and get into the introduction of this guide. All right, so introduction. In this guide, you'll learn about the basic components needed to create and use a packaged Docker container action. To focus this guide on the components needed to package the action, the functionality of the actions code is minimal. The action prints hello world in the logs or hello who agree if you provide a custom name. Once you complete this project, you should understand how to build your own Docker container action and test it in a workflow. All right, so that sounds exactly what I'm looking for. The self-hosted runners must use a Linux operating system. We're not going to be using self-hosted runners, so I'm going to skip past this part here. Prerequisites. You must create a repository on GitHub. I have a repository that I've already previously created. If you don't have one, go ahead and create one now if you want to follow along with this guide. Or moving on to the next prerequisite, if your repository uses GitHub LFS, right now it does not, so I'll skip that part as well. You may find it helpful to have a basic understanding of GitHub Actions, environment variables, and the Docker container file system. I'm pretty well versed in all of those, so I'm good there. And I think that marks all of our requirements as met, and we should be able to continue on to the next step with no problems. Next step, creating a Docker file. Okay, so I would normally want to be able to use Docker images that I've already created, but this guide is going to show us how to use a Docker file, which can be useful in certain instances, so it's definitely worth learning. In your new Hello World Docker action directory, okay, I don't actually have a Hello World Docker action directory in the repository that I'm using, so I'm going to pause here and go to the project that I want to use, which I have opened over here in my IDE. I'm using the Golang IDE. It doesn't really matter what IDE you use. You can use something as simple like VS Code. I just happen to be using this because I was doing a couple other things, and I do a lot of Go programming, so I kind of like the JetBrains IDEs, which is why I use them a lot. So you'll probably see me using a lot of JetBrains IDEs on my stream, specifically the Go one, since I pretty much use that one for everything. Sometimes you'll see me in VS Code as well, but enough about IDEs. We need a action here, so I'm going to the .github folder where actions are run from, and going to the actions folder, and I'm going to create a new action called Hello World Docker action, and that's a directory that we're creating, not a file, a directory. All right, great. So now we do have that directory, so let's go back to the guide here. The next step is to make sure that your file name is capitalized correctly. Use a capital D, but don't. All right, so what it's saying here is make sure this Docker file is case sensitive. So make sure you use a capital D and a lowercase f for file. in the name. So we're just going to copy this Docker file and we're going to create a new file inside that hello world directory we just made. Capital D for Docker and lowercase f for file. And we want to add that to the repositories. And then we're going to go ahead and paste that in. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to upgrade this version of Alpine that it's using to 20.2 just to use the latest version. And the next steps here are we're moving on to the next part or the next chapter to creating an action meta file. So we've got our Dockerfile, that's the first step. The next part is to create an action metadata file. Create a new action.yaml file in the hello world Docker action directory you created above. For more information, see meta syntax for GitHub Actions. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create this file. Copy that code and create a new file called action.yaml. I don't think there was an A, I think it was just YML. It may take YAML spelled out, but it may not. So let's just add it how it specified it in the guide. Okay, so I got that. The next instructions say this metadata file contains one who to greet input and one time output parameter. Okay, so there's one input parameter here and one output parameter here. To pass inputs to Docker container, you should declare the input using inputs and pass the input in the args keyword. Everything you include in args is passed to the container, but for better discoverability for users of your action, we recommend using inputs. Okay, so we're not actually going to publish this, so it's speaking to us as if we were. So that's just kind of some guidance on how to actually build things out, which is good to know because I do plan on publishing a GitHub action later publicly. So that's good to know. GitHub will build an image from your Docker file and run commands in a new container using this image. Okay. So it's specifying the Docker file as using Docker. So I'm guessing it's using just a Docker image. It's going to build that. And args are input. Are inputs from the input. The one input parameter. Okay. Writing the action code. You can choose. So this is going on to the next step, which is writing the action code. You can choose any base Docker image, and therefore any language for your action. The following shell script example uses a who to greet input variable to print hello who to greet in the log file. Next, the script gets the current time and sets it as an output variable that actions running later in a job can use. In order for GitHub to recognize output variables, you must write them to the GitHub output environment file. Okay, so that's really good to know. So when we want to create output variables, we have to append them to this file here. Echo value, and they're showing us a command here on how to do that. For more information, see workflow commands for GitHub Actions. Okay. Create a new entry point.sh file in the hello world Docker action directory. Okay, so we're getting back to the tutorial. There's a lot of overview and instructions and guidance here, which is good, So we have to create this, add the following code to your entry.sh file. Let's go ahead and copy that and do everything at one time. New file, entry point.sh. Hopefully I didn't fumble finger that. And paste that there. Get rid of that extra line. All right, cool. So now we have that script there inside the hello world Docker action. If the entry point executes without any errors, the action status is set to success. So it's telling us what's going to happen when the action actually runs. You can also explicitly set exit codes in your actions code in your actions code to provide an action status. For more information, see exit codes for actions. Okay, that's good to know. I'll be taking a look at that later. Make your entry point.sh file executable. Git provides a way, okay, so since we're going to be adding this file to Git, which we haven't added any of the other files yet, we've added them, but we haven't added the contents of the file. So we need to do that. So let's go ahead and add that file, but we'll add all the other ones as well. We're just doing it one. Excuse me. There's showing that they're added, but then there's also changes. So there's probably nothing in those files because as soon as we create the file, my IDE wants to add them immediately. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add this entire directory, and that should add all of the files. Git status, git add, and just that directory. And so now all of those files should be there. Files, and then what if I do this on that directory? I want to see if I can see what the permissions on the executable is. Nope. We're getting my commands here. Format full. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and continue on. So we want to update that index to make sure that it's executable, which is why I wanted to check the permissions on it just to show you that it's adding the executable bit. Oh, I'm just not pasting that. Oh, entry point does not exist. That's right, because it doesn't. It is .GitHub Actions. Hello, and then entry point. What just happened? Messing up here. Okay, boom. Not what I wanted. Oh, it's stage. That's my problem. Just copy that, paste that in. Again, it's not. All right, so it has an executable bit now. Seeing that 755 is good enough confirmation to me. All right, so, and I'll put like entry point means the file is executable missions. All right, so that completes that part of writing the actions, writing the entry point sh file. The next step is, so we want to create a README. I actually already have a README, so I'm going to skip this part. Commit tag and push your action to GitHub. For your terminal, commit your action, entry point, Dockerfile, and README files. It's best practice to also add a version tag for the release of your action. We're not going to add the version tag because I'm not ready to release anything yet. So we're just going to go ahead and we've added them. Now we're going to commit them, and then we're going to push them. Do I have all the files that I need? It looks like it. I got my Dockerfile, action file, and entry point. We're skipping the README. Okay. Push We don't need to force push. We're just going to push that to normal. And then I'm going to open this repository up. Go to Actions. All right. Right now, this is just my code quality check running, not the actual GitHub action that we just made. So, testing out your action in a workflow. Now you're ready to test your action out in a workflow. When an action is in a private repository, you can control who can access it. For more information, see Managing GitHub Actions settings for a repository. Public actions can be used by workflows in any repository. Okay, so example using the public action. The following workflow code uses the completed hello world action in the public actions hello world Docker action repository. This is actually not the name of the repository. It's named something different because I'm using something different. Copy the following workflow example code into a GitHub workflow main.yaml file, but replace the actions hello world Docker action with your repository and action name. Okay. Double check that this repository is public. It's private, so okay, so it's not public. We are private. I have not released this yet, so we're gonna need to do something different. Let me go ahead and see what the instructions say. Examples of using a public. It did mention something about private here, but then it shows me examples of using a public. That's the file. Okay, examples of using a private action. So I'm going to skip down to this section because this actually applies to me. Copy the following example workflow code into a GitHub workflow main YAML. Okay, file in your actions repository. For you can also replace the who to greet input with your name. The private action can't be published to GitHub Marketplace and can only be used in this repository. All right, that's fine with me. So I just need to create a workflow called main.yaml, and on push, it's going to run my hello world job. So what are we going? We got a few steps here. We're checking out. We're using the checkout action. We are running another hello world action step. That's the step that action we just created. And it's going to use /. All right, so I don't think this is right. I think we're gonna have to modify that, but let's go ahead and add the workflow main.yaml file, main.yaml, add that, and then paste the contents. All right, so hello world runs on Ubuntu latest. Name a job to say hello. Okay, checkout, and what else? I think that's it. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and save and commit that. I'll copy this. Cool. All right, so the next thing to do is from your repository, check the Actions tab and select the latest window workflow run. Under Jobs or in the visualization graph, click a job to say hello. All right, so we're going to the repository. We're going to Actions. This is the one that I just pushed. Now if we, okay, so I say a job to say hello, and it's actually run into an error. Error, Docker build failed, and what the heck is the code? Okay, build run / who to greet Mona with Mona. So there's a slight mistake here. It's looking for a Dockerfile action workflow by GCC // Dockerfile. Okay, so it looks like it's looking like it has the right directory, but it's looking for the wrong. Okay, so it's looking for the Dockerfile in the wrong place. Let's go fix that. It's not ./ it is, copy this path here and just paste that in here. It's ./.github. So the current directory, GitHub Actions, hello world, Docker Action. So that's where it's located. So let's go ahead and try and push that up and see if that fixes that error. Status, git add. Commit -m. Fix. This is just a test, so it really doesn't matter what the message says or the format. Normally I use a more Git convention format, but for today we're just going to be lazy about our commits. Although we should never do that. That's a bad habit. Now let's go back and see if this job is going to run correctly. Fix main workflow. The job to say hello. It's been running for 4 seconds. It looks like, oh, okay, so everything passed. So if we expand this, we've run the GitHub Action, hello world Docker Action. We've built the image, and now we're able to say hello Monacat. So these are all the steps that were listed, and then we have our output step. Echo run time was okay. So we're running our step to output the time and post checkout. Okay, so looks like we're done with that part, and testing went good. And pretty much that's the end of the tutorial. Accessing files created by a Docker container. When a container action runs, it will automatically map the default working directory GitHub Workspace on the runner with the GitHub Workspace. And I think we saw that when we saw that error. If we take a quick look, I was trying to build that Docker image. I think that's what it's talking about. Home, runner, work, Docker, GCC. Maybe that's not what it's talking about. A container runs, it will automatically map the default working directory GitHub Workspace on the runner with a GitHub Workspace directory on the container. Any files added to this directory or on the container will be available to any subsequent steps in the same object, in the same job. For example, if you have a container action that builds your project and you would like to upload the build output as an artifact, you can use the following steps. Okay, so let's see what it's talking about here. Workflow. Runs on steps, checkout. So we checked out and then we containerized build, blah, blah, blah. We run this GitHub Actions. So the local action, my container action, upload, build artifacts, action, upload artifacts, workspace artifacts, path, GitHub Workspace. Okay, all right, I think I understand that, but I'll have to practice that a little bit to make sure I understand it completely. Example Docker container actions on GitHub. So it looks like we're done with this tutorial. We got what we needed. We were able to successfully run that. I think what I would like to do is another step is to be able to run a container from an image and not from just a Docker file. So I have that guide over here to help me understand how to do that with GitHub Actions. Oh, I'm going avoiding duplication. Okay, that is not the guide. I'm not sure what I did. I must have running jobs in a container. Using a container to run the steps in a job. Use jobs.jobid.container to create a container to run any steps in a job that don't already specify a container. If you have steps that use both script and container actions, the container actions will run as sibling containers on the same network with the same volume amounts. Not exactly, okay. That's gonna, what if you have steps that use both script and container actions? Both script and container actions. The container actions will run as sibling containers on the same network with the same volume amounts. Not sure I have that understand. I probably need an example to understand that better. If you do not set a container, all steps will run directly on the host specified by runs on. Okay, so that I understand. Unless steps refer to an action configured to run in a container. Unless steps refer to an action configured to run in a container. Okay. The default shell for run steps inside a container is shell, or so it's just regular shell, no born again shell instead of bash. This can be overridden by jobs ID defaults run or job ID steps whatever shell. Okay, I'm not sure about the syntax here. Do you write it out like that? So you just supply, so whatever job ID, that's kind of, all right, running a job with a container. I don't want to deviate from that, guys. So we'll just keep going and take a deeper look at that later. And there's also some stuff in the overview that I don't quite understand as well. I do understand that if you do not set a container, all steps will run directly on the host specified on runs on. So, and using this running a job within a container. So I have my workflow. There it has a list of jobs running on the main branch, and when you push something to main, container test jobs run on Ubuntu latest, and then you specify container, and it'll use this image. So maybe that's what it means. Maybe it means no. So instead of running on the host, it's going to run inside this Node.js image. Is that what it's going to spin up a container for the node with a Node.js image? Is that what it means? And it's got environment, node, ports, 80 volumes, options, CPUs. This is helpful information. Step name checkout. Check the Docker environment file. Run ls/docker. Okay. All right, so it's not telling us to do anything. It's just explaining some stuff to us here, and I'm not sure I'm understanding it, even with the example. So let's see if I can figure this out using what I have right now. Now, one thing I do want to be able to do is run an image instead of a Dockerfile to build that image. Because what we just did was we created an action that when you run it in a step, it will build the image from the Dockerfile and then run that container. But that's not what I want. I want more something like this, where I think that this is something more of what I want, where we're specifying an image. When you only specify a container image, you can omit the image keyword. Okay. So if I only specify image, I don't have to provide I don't provide any of this information. Then I can just do that. Okay, cool. So let's go back and see. This is our main one. Let me run something real quick. There's a couple of things I want to try here. So we can run a container. It says run job ID container. We have one job, hello world job. So we can specify a container to run this in. But there's something else that it mentioned that I want to test out. So I think this step is checkout. This is a public checkout action. And this is our hello world action. And it is a container action. So is this a script action or a container action? I'm not sure. This is probably also a container action, I can imagine, because it would have to ensure that Git is installed. And this is a container action because we specify one. But this one, I guess this is a script because we're just running echo. And it said what? If you have steps that use both script and container actions, the container actions will run as sibling containers on the same network with the same volume mounts. So it's funny. We have this container, but I guess we could run it on the host too. So I could take this, duplicate this step, run entrypoint.sh on the host. I'm just trying to understand what that overview is saying a little bit better. So now we want to take this file and run it on the, I think it'll run on the host if we do this. So in here, it's running in a container, and on here, it's running in a host. I think that's what will happen. Oh. I want the relative path. Okay. So let me add that. And let me actually add something else here to the script. I'm going to cat slash, I think that's right. I hope it ain't wrong because it'll crash on us. That's all right. So let's add the status. Actions, hello world. Just add all this. And then add workflow. Okay, cool. Understanding GN containers, a deep dive. We're gonna push this out. Let's see. Okay, so now we have a couple of things going. And I'm trying to make sure I understand what this is talking about. Use jobs.jobID container to create a container to run any steps in a job that don't already specify a container. So jobs that don't specify a container, if you have steps that use both script and container actions, the container actions will run as sibling containers. If you have jobs that run both container actions, the container actions will run as sibling containers. So any job that runs as a container will run as a sibling to the other actions and on the same network with the same volume amounts. Okay. If you do not set a container, all steps will run directly on the host. So any job that doesn't set a container will run as a host. So container actions runs as sibling containers when you specify a container for the job. Okay, I think I'm starting to understand. Okay, so we have the test, say hello world. We set up a job. We don't need to worry about that. Check it out. So we etc'd out that file after we did in our hello world, and we got Alpine, and it's the same script that we're pointing to. So we should see something about Ubuntu when we do this. Hello, pretty name Ubuntu. Okay, so yeah, same script, but when you run it as a container action, it runs in that container, and when you run it as a regular step without a container action, I guess it's called a non-container action, just called a script action. I'm not sure what it's called. Got to learn our naming conventions. All right, okay. Okay, so I think I'm starting to understand. And now what this is telling me is what I really want to, this should be the final piece I need to understand for running containers and GitHub Actions. Now I can also specify an overall container. So that makes me wonder, if I specify a container for the job, and I have a specify a container for the job. Okay, so now I should be able to do this. All right, so there's another thing. Let me use the get latest container as a container. So I have, nope, this is the wrong file. I want to go back to my main. And for this one, doing some further testing. Again, the goal is to be able to run an image any image I want. Container. Coherence / go get latest. All right, so now when this runs, it should be running under this container. And we can do another step too to see if that's, to see if we can get so if it's running in, if every job runs in that container, I should be able to do go get latest Alpine, because that container contains a executable which will pull the latest version of Alpine. But it'll also run this script, and the etc should print out. I think go get latest is based on Alpine only. So let's go ahead and try that. Status, git add, main workflow. So I mistakenly thought this was a guide, but it's really just explaining how to running jobs in container in a little more depth. Although I wish they would have clarified, expanded on this to help me understand it. But I'm making up my own way to figure this out, so hopefully I have the right understanding. Commit, add. Better understand GA containers. Push that automation out, and we're going to go back and see how it works out. GitHub Actions. Better understand GA containers. What do we got going on here? Error, process completed with exit 2. Panic, DH user environment variable is not set. Okay, so when you're using that GitHub go get latest action, you need to specify some environment variables. I can go grab those from the other workflow that I was testing out with. I can just grab these here, and actually I can put these in the step. I don't need to put them at the job level since only that one step needs it. Entry point, nope, that's the wrong place. So it should be here. I'm gonna put these here to index those. All right, again, that should be correct. Yep, name uses, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Let's see if that fixes that bug here. Well, is there any other errors that popped up? Post checkout, no, the other one, all the other ones passed. It was just this one print current Alpine version. One thing I can see here is the entry point.sh on the host. It's no longer on the host. It's on the container that we specify for the host, which runs as a sibling to the hello world container action. Okay. So I think I'm starting to understand it now. And you know what? It looks like this is working too, because otherwise I wouldn't have asked about this if it was running on Ubuntu. So yeah, it looks like I got this figured out, and it's running on Alpine 3.17.3, where this is running on Alpine 3.20.2. All right, so let's add this one fix. Let's see if that completes successfully. Too many M's. Fix. So I've gotten a couple of things out of here to fix. What am I fixing? Fix main workflow. Yeah, that works. Push origin automation. Or I guess I should have said I was adding secrets to the main workflow. That would have made more sense and better clarity. Going back to actions, that should be running again. Fix main workflow. It should have been called add secrets to workflow. How long do these normally take to run? So I want to look at checkout. Okay. Did everything run successfully? Post checkout. All right. Okay, cool. So now it ran the hello script, and that worked fine. That ran successfully before. But now we're running the print current Alpine version, and it printed the current Alpine version correctly. All right, awesome. So that's work. Okay, cool. So I accomplished my goal for today, which was to complete this guide here, creating a Docker container action. Now I know how to create a Docker container action, and I also know how to run a job in a container from an image that is already published, and I understand how they run in context to container actions. They run as siblings on the same network with the same volume amounts. So they'll share that information so they can kind of pass data back and forth to each other. And I guess the only thing that matters is the order that they run in, which I probably need to understand, like, do job steps run in parallel or they run in order? And looking at the YAML file, since they look like a YAML array, I guess they run in order. But I really couldn't tell because things were kicking off. It looked like some of this stuff was running in parallel. Am I crazy? I'll try to pay closer attention next time, but I can just also read up about that to make sure that I understand it completely. All right, so that's going to complete this tutorial or this guide that I ran through today. I've also did a couple of extra things, which is kind of understanding how running jobs in a container work. So that was pretty useful, and I'm getting better to understanding GitHub Actions. Hopefully I'll get more advanced and understand it to the level that I understand Circle CI. But that will conclude our video for today. Thank you for joining. Again, I am Khalifa, your host on CodeHog78. Please join me in the future for more videos like this. If you have any questions, please leave something in the comment, or if you would like to see other videos or suggestions, please leave those in the comments as well. Again, thanks for joining.